Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HFY Horizon and watched the stars. For 3 months, his ship had traveled through empty space. Earth was now so far away that their home sun looked like just another dot of light. Jake had dreamed of this moment since he was a boy. Humanity was finally reaching for the stars. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the sensors," called out Lieutenant Ben Rogers from his station. The young officer's voice carried excitement and worry. At the same time, Jake walked over to look at the readings. The screen showed a large object moving through space about 2 million kilometers away. It was too big to be an asteroid, and too regular in shape to be natural. Jake felt his heart beat faster. After all these years of wondering if humans were alone in the universe, they might finally have their answer. "Dr. Webb, please come to the bridge." Jake said into his communicator. Dr. Lisa Webb arrived within minutes. She was Earth's best expert on alien life, even though she had never actually seen any. Her job was to figure out how to talk to aliens if they ever found them. Now that moment might have come. "What do you think, Doctor?" Jake asked, pointing at the screen. Lisa studied the readings carefully. "It's definitely artificial. The shape is too perfect, and it's moving in a straight line. Captain, I think we're looking at our first alien spacecraft." The bridge went quiet. Every person there understood they were witnessing history. Jake made his decision quickly. "Set course to intercept, but keep our distance. And send a message to Earth. Tell them we may have found what we came looking for." As the horizon moved closer, the alien ship became clearer on their screens. It was beautiful in a strange way. The hull was smooth and curved like a seashell, colored in shades of blue and green. It was about twice the size of their own ship. "Captain, they're scanning us," reported Commander Rick Stone, Jake's second in command. Rick was a military man who always expected trouble. "Their scanners are more advanced than ours, but they don't seem hostile." "Any signs they're trying to communicate?" Jake asked. "Nothing yet, sir." "But wait, ... Ben's fingers moved quickly over his controls. "I'm getting something now. It's not radio. They're using some kind of light pattern." Dr. Webb stepped forward, put it on the main screen. The view screen filled with patterns of colored light that pulsed and changed. It was clearly artificial, but unlike anything humans had ever seen. Lisa watched the patterns carefully, taking notes on her tablet. "It's repeating," she said after several minutes. "See how the blue lights always come before the green ones? And there's a mathematical sequence in the timing. They're trying to show us they're intelligent." Jake nodded. "Can we respond?" "I think so." "Ben, can you control our running lights from your station?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Let's start simple. Flash our lights in the same mathematical sequence they showed us." For the next hour, the two ships exchanged light patterns. Slowly, Dr. Webb began to understand the basic structure of the alien language. The breakthrough came when the aliens sent them images. "Captain, look at this," Lisa said, pointing to her screen. The aliens had sent a picture of their own ship, and a picture of space around them, and what looked like a star map. "They're telling us where they come from," Jake realized. The aliens sent more images. Pictures of their world, which was mostly covered in water. Pictures of themselves, which made everyone on the bridge gasp. The aliens looked like large dolphins, but with long arms that ended in delicate hands. They had big, intelligent eyes, and seemed to move through water as easily as humans moved through air. "They're aquatic," Dr. Webb said with wonder. "A water-based civilization that somehow learned to travel between stars." The aliens sent one more image that changed everything. It showed dozens of different alien species standing together. Some looked like giant insects, others like walking crystals, and still others that were too strange to describe. At the center of the image was a symbol that appeared on all their ships and buildings. "It's a government," Rick said quietly. "They're showing us they're part of something bigger." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had just discovered they were not alone in the universe. Not only that, but there was already an established galactic civilization out there. The alien ship began moving closer. Jake tensed, but their new friend sent another light pattern that Dr. Webb translated as peaceful greetings. When the ships were only a few hundred meters apart, the alien vessel opened what was clearly a docking port. "They want us to come aboard," Lisa said. Jake looked around his bridge. Every face showed the same mixture of excitement and fear that he felt. This was the moment that would change humanity forever. "Prepare a boarding party," he ordered. Dr. Webb, Commander Stone, and myself. Full environmental suits, and bring the translation computer. An hour later, Jake found himself floating in an airlock filled with warm, salty water. Through the clear walls, he could see 3 aliens waiting for them. They were even more beautiful than in the pictures, their skin shimmering with patterns of blue and silver. The largest alien approached Jake and made a complex gesture with its hands. Through speakers in the water, Jake heard sounds like whale songs mixed with musical notes. Dr. Webb's computer worked frantically to translate. "Welcome, young swimmers from the dry world," the computer finally said. "We are the scifi. We have waited long to meet you." Jake tried to reply through the computer. "We are humans from Earth. We come in peace." The alien that had spoken gestured to itself. "I am Zethtar, a speaker for my people. Your species has taken its first steps into the great ocean of stars. This is a day of celebration." Over the next several hours, Jake, Lisa, and Rick learned about the galactic civilization. The scifi explained that they were part of something called the Galactic Council, a group of 12 advanced species that governed most of the galaxy. Younger species could apply to join if they proved themselves worthy. "Your species shows great promise," Zethtar told them. "The scifi would be honored to sponsor your application to the Council. With our support, humanity could join the galactic community within a few years." Jake felt hope growing in his chest. What would membership mean for us? Protection, trade, access to advanced technology, and friendship with species across the galaxy, Zethtar replied. "But I must warn you, young Jake Morrison, not all council members welcome new species. Some believe the galaxy is already crowded enough." Lisa leaned forward. "Are you saying some would oppose us?" Zethtar's large eyes grew sad. "There are those who prefer the old ways, but do not fear. The scifi have been council members for 200 years. Our word carries weight." As the meeting ended and the humans prepared to return to their ship, Zethtar gave Jake a small device. "This will allow instant communication between our peoples. Use it to contact us when you are ready to begin the application process." Jake shook the alien's strange, webbed hand. "Thank you, Zethtar. You've given humanity a gift beyond measure." Back on the horizon, Jake stood on the bridge and watched the scifi ship disappear into hyperspace. Around him, his crew was already preparing reports to send back to Earth. Soon, every human would know that they were no longer alone. Jake smiled as he thought about the future. Humanity was about to join a galactic civilization. They would have alien friends, advanced technology, and protection from threats they couldn't even imagine yet. Earth's children would grow up knowing they were part of something vast and wonderful. He had no way of knowing that in less than 3 years, he would watch those same alien friends die, screaming in the fires of genocide. He could not imagine that the hope burning in his chest would turn to rage that would reshape the galaxy itself. For now, Jake Morrison was just a human captain who had made first contact with aliens. The universe seemed full of infinite possibilities, and humanity was ready to embrace them all. 6 months had passed since first contact, and Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Dr. Lisa Webb now sat in an office that didn't exist before the Zelithy arrived. The Department of Galactic Affairs occupied an entire building. In Geneva, with flags from dozens of Earth nations flying alongside, a new banner showing humanity's first steps into space, Lisa looked at the reports covering her desk. Applications from thousands of humans who wanted to learn alien languages, military assessments of galactic technology, economic projections for trade with other worlds. Everything was moving so fast it made her head spin. Director Webb, Ambassador. Nash is ready for his briefing, her assistant announced. Kyle Nash entered the office wearing Earth's first diplomatic uniform, designed for alien contact. He was a career diplomat who had volunteered for the most important assignment in human history. In 2 days, he would travel to the galactic capital world of Nexus Prime for preliminary hearings about humanity's application to join the Galactic Council. "How are you feeling, Kyle?" Lisa asked. "Nervous," he admitted. "I've studied every piece of information the Zelithy gave us about Council procedures, but actually standing in front of representatives from 12 alien species? That's something else entirely." Lisa nodded. "Remember, you're not just representing Earth. You're representing the idea that young species deserve a chance to prove themselves. The Zelithy believe in us. That has to count for something." Kyle picked up a thick folder from Lisa's desk. Inside were detailed proposals for how humanity would contribute to galactic civilization. Medical research, artistic works, scientific innovations, and military support, if needed. Earth's best minds had worked for months to put together the strongest possible application. "The Zelithy have been good to us," Kyle said. "Zethtar personally guaranteed that their delegation will support our membership. But what about the others?" Lisa pulled up a holographic display that showed the 12 Council species. 8 of them seemed neutral or mildly positive. "They're willing to give us a chance if we can prove we're civilized and useful." "And the other 4? Lisa's expression darkened. "The hegemony. 4 species that have been allied for over 1,000 years. They call themselves the Guardians of Galactic Order. According to our intelligence, they think the galaxy is already too crowded with young species." Kyle studied the images of the hegemony representatives. The Vorthic looked like giant spiders made of metal. The Krell resembled armored bears with multiple arms. The Zephyrians were tall and thin with skin like black glass. The Drakmor were the worst, reptilian creatures with dead eyes and a reputation for cruelty. "What's their objection to us specifically?" Kyle asked. "They say we're too aggressive, too quick to resort to violence. They point to our wars, our weapons, our military history." Lisa sighed. "They conveniently ignore the fact that we've also produced great art, literature, and science, or that we've been trying to move beyond our violent past." A communication device on Lisa's desk chimed with an incoming message. The holographic image of Zethtar appeared above the device. The Zelithy looked worried. "Friend Lisa, I bring troubling news," Zethtar said. "Our deep space monitors have detected unusual ship movements near hegemony space. Large military formations are conducting exercises near our outer colonies." Lisa felt a chill. "What kind of exercises?" "A type usually used to practice orbital bombardment," Zethtar replied. "Our council representative has asked for an explanation, but the hegemony claims they are routine training missions." Kyle leaned forward. "Do you think this has anything to do with our application?" "I fear it might," Zethtar admitted. "The hegemony has been vocal about their opposition to admitting humanity. They may be trying to intimidate us into withdrawing our support." After ending the call, Lisa immediately contacted Admiral Paul Grant at Earth's Expanding Space Command. The Admiral appeared on her screen wearing the blue uniform of the new Terran Defense Force. "Admiral, we may have a problem," Lisa began, and explained the Zealothy's concerns. Grant's weathered face grew serious. "How many ships are we talking?" "About?" Zethtar didn't give specific numbers, but he seemed genuinely worried. The Zealothy aren't easily frightened. "What's our current military position in that region?" Grant asked. Lisa pulled up a star map. "We have 3 patrol ships in the general area. The U's Defiance, under Captain Morrison's command, is the largest." "That's not much if the hegemony decides to make trouble," Grant said grimly. "I'll order 2 more ships to join Morrison's patrol, but Lisa, we need to be realistic. If the hegemony wants to threaten the Zealothy, there's not much we can do to stop them." The next day, Ambassador Nash departed for Nexus Prime aboard a Zealothy transport. Lisa watched his ship disappear into hyperspace and wondered if she was sending him into a trap. On Nexus Prime, Kyle found himself standing in the most impressive building he had ever seen. The council chambers were carved from a single massive crystal that grew from the planet's surface. Each of the 12 council species had their own section designed for their specific needs. The Zealothy area was flooded with water, while the silicon-based Lithians had chambers filled with superheated gases. Kyle took his place in the center of the chamber, designed for species that breathed oxygen and lived in normal gravity. Around him, 12 different types of aliens studied humanity's application. The proceedings began with Zethtar presenting humanity's case. The Zealothy spoke eloquently about human achievements, their potential contributions to galactic civilization, and their peaceful intentions. Several council members asked thoughtful questions about human society and culture. Then the hegemony began their opposition. Drakmor warlord Scarth spoke first. His voice was like grinding stone. "This species has spent its entire history killing its own kind. They have weapons that can destroy entire continents. They wage war for resources, territory, and ideology. Why should we trust such creatures?" Kyle stood to respond. "Honored warlord, humanity has indeed known war. But we have also known peace. We've learned from our mistakes and built institutions to prevent conflict. Our application includes detailed proposals for peaceful cooperation and mutual benefit." Vorthik Hive Queen Zareth clicked her mandibles dismissively. "Young species always promise peace when they want something. Once they gain power, their true nature emerges. The galaxy has seen this pattern before." The debate continued for hours. Kyle presented humanity's achievements in science, art, and philosophy. He spoke about Earth's efforts to explore space peacefully and to learn from other civilizations. But for every positive point he made, the hegemony found a negative counter-argument. Finally, Krell General Thorgrim spoke the words Kyle had been dreading. "The hegemony formally objects to this application. We believe humanity is not ready for galactic citizenship. We recommend a minimum waiting period of 50 years while they prove their commitment to peace." Kyle felt his heart sink. 50 years would be a lifetime for most humans alive today. It would delay humanity's entry into galactic civilization. By generations, Zethtar requested a recess, and the council agreed to reconvene in 3 days. During the break, Kyle met privately with representatives from the neutral species. Most were sympathetic to humanity's cause, but none wanted to directly oppose the hegemony. "They are old and powerful," explained Christarch Lumina of the Ethereals. "When they speak of maintaining galactic order, others listen. Perhaps if humanity could demonstrate their peaceful intentions more clearly." Kyle spent 2 sleepless nights trying to think of ways to address the hegemony's concerns. But how could humanity prove they were peaceful when the hegemony seemed determined to find fault with everything they did? On the 3rd day, Kyle received an urgent message from Dr. Webb on Earth. The communication was scrambled and brief. "Zealothy colonies under threat. Hegemony fleet movements increasing. Return. Home immediately. Kyle stood before the council one final time. Honored representatives, Earth appreciates the time you have given to our application. However, recent events require me to return home for consultations with my government. We respectfully request that this matter be postponed until we can address the concerns that have been raised. As Kyle left Nexus Prime, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had failed humanity. The dream of joining the galactic community seemed further away than ever. Meanwhile, in space near the Scifi colonies, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched hegemony warships move into attack positions. His small fleet was vastly outnumbered, but Jake had received orders to protect Scifi civilians if possible. Captain, the Scifi are requesting immediate evacuation support, reported his communications officer. Jake looked at the tactical display. 40 hegemony ships against his 3 vessels. If shooting started, it would be over quickly. Send a message to the hegemony fleet, Jake ordered. Tell them they are in violation of Scifi space and should withdraw immediately. The response came back within minutes. Human vessel, you are ordered to withdraw from this region. Hegemony forces are conducting legitimate military exercises. Any interference will be considered an act of war. Jake gripped the arms of his command chair. Everything Dr. Webb had worked for, everything Ambassador Nash had tried to achieve, was about to be destroyed. But he could not abandon. The attack began at dawn on the Scifi homeworld of Aquatica. Captain Jake Morrison was still 3 hours away when the first reports reached his ship. His communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Jones, turned pale as she read the incoming messages. Captain, we're getting emergency signals from the Scifi capital, she said, her voice shaking. Multiple ships are attacking the planet. Jake rushed to the tactical display. Red dots representing enemy vessels surrounded Aquatica like a swarm of angry insects. Each dot was a hegemony warship, and there were hundreds of them. How many? Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Sensors show over 300 ships in the first wave, reported Commander Rick Stone. Sir, that's not a military operation. That's genocide, Jake finished grimly. He opened communications to his small fleet. All ships, maximum speed to Aquatica. I don't care if we burn out the engines. The UE's Defiance and her 2 escort. Ships pushed their engines beyond safe limits. Behind them, 3 more Earth vessels were racing to join them, but they were days away. Jake knew his 6 ships would make no difference against a fleet of hundreds, but he could not abandon the ZLATHI. As they drew closer to Aquatica, the horrific scope of the attack became clear. The planet's beautiful blue oceans were turning black with smoke and debris. Hegemony ships hung in orbit like vultures, their energy weapons carving massive wounds in the planet's surface. Dear God, whispered Dr. Tony Clark, the fleet's science officer, they're boiling the oceans. Jake watched in horror as the hegemony fleet systematically destroyed every Scifi city. The aquatic aliens had built their civilization in harmony with their world's vast oceans. Now those same oceans were becoming their grave. Sir, we're getting a transmission from the surface, Sarah reported. It's Zethtar. The image that appeared on the screen broke Jake's heart. Zethtar floated in water that was now dark with ash and blood. Behind him, Jake could see other Scifi trying desperately to save their young. The elder's normally bright skin was gray with shock and pain. Friend Jake, Zethtar said, his voice barely audible. They came without warning. No declaration of war. No demands for surrender. They simply began killing us all. We're coming to get you, Jake promised. Hold on just a little longer. Zethtar's large eyes filled with sadness. There is no time, young swimmer. Our cities are gone. Our people are dying. But you must know the truth. He held up a small crystal device. This contains proof of what they have done. Evidence that this was planned long before your people applied to the council. The transmission cut to static as another wave of energy weapons struck the area where Zithtar had been hiding. Jake turned to his tactical officer. How close can we get to the planet? The hegemony fleet is spread thin, Lieutenant Ben Rogers replied. If we come in fast and low, we might be able to reach the northern continent before they react. Do it. The 3 Earth ships dove toward Aquatica like meteors. Hegemony vessels immediately moved to intercept them, but Jake's gamble paid off. They reached the planet's surface before the enemy could organize a proper response. What Jake found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. The Zelethi had built their cities as underwater gardens, filled with coral structures and flowing currents. Now those cities were graveyards. Bodies of Zelethi civilians floated everywhere, many of them children who had never had a chance to swim free in the open ocean. Search and rescue teams, deploy immediately, Jake ordered. Find any survivors you can. For 6 desperate hours, Jake's Marines combed through the ruins of Zelethi civilization. They found small groups of survivors hiding in deep underwater caves. Each rescue felt like a small victory against the overwhelming darkness of what had happened. General Marcus Webb, Lisa's brother and Jake's Marine commander, personally led the search teams. He was a tough soldier who had seen combat before, but even he was shaken by what they found. Captain, we've located a survivor shelter with about 300 Zelethi inside, Marcus reported over the radio. But sir, there are wounded here who won't survive transport to our ships. Jake made the hardest decision of his military career. Bring out who you can. We can't save them all, but we'll save who we can. As the rescue operation continued, Hegemony ships began closing in on their position. Jake knew they had minutes at most before they would be forced to withdraw or be destroyed themselves. That's when Zethtar's signal appeared again on their sensors. The Zelethi elder was alive, but barely. Jake personally took a shuttle down. To retrieve him, he found Zethtar floating in a small air pocket within the ruins of what had once been a great library. The old alien was dying, his body broken by the collapse of his city, but his eyes were still bright with intelligence and purpose. The crystal, Zethtar whispered as Jake carefully lifted him from the water. You must take it to your people. Show them what the hegemony truly is. Jake accepted the small device, its surface warm to the touch. We'll make them pay for this, he promised. Zethtar managed a weak smile. Your species has fire in its heart, Jake Morrison. That fire will be needed in the dark times ahead. He pressed something else into Jake's hand, a small piece of Zelethi, artwork that depicted 2 different species swimming together in harmony. Remember us not as victims, but as friends who believed in a better galaxy. Zethtar died in Jake's arms as the shuttle raced back to the Defiance. Jake held the old alien's body and wept openly, not caring who saw his tears. The first alien friend humanity had ever made was gone, murdered by those who claimed to represent galactic civilization. The evacuation ships barely escaped as the hegemony fleet closed in. In total, Jake's flotilla had managed to save 47,000 Zelethi from a population that had once numbered over 2 billion. It was a tiny fraction, but it was all they could do. As the Earth ships jumped to hyperspace, Jake looked back one last time at Aquatica. A planet that had once been a blue jewel was now a smoking ruin. The hegemony had not just killed the Zelethi, they had murdered an entire world. 3 days later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session on Nexus Prime. Ambassador Kyle Nash, who had returned to Earth after the attack, watched the proceedings via encrypted transmission. The hegemony's explanation was as bold as it was false. Warlord Scarth stood before the council and claimed that the Zelethi had been developing illegal weapons. We acted to prevent a threat to galactic security, he declared. The Scifi were in secret alliance with the aggressive humans, planning to destabilize the established order. Kyle watched in disgust as the other council members accepted this obvious lie. Even worse, they used the attack as justification for their next action. Given the tragic events on Aquatica, announced Vorthik Hive Queen Zareth, the council has no choice but to permanently reject humanity's application for membership. Any species that would ally with terrorists cannot be trusted with galactic citizenship. Kyle tried to present the evidence that Sithtar had died to preserve, but his requests to speak were denied. The council's decision was final. Humanity was banned from galactic civilization, branded as allies of terrorists, based on lies told by the very creatures who had committed genocide. When the session ended, Kyle sent a brief message back to Earth. They have closed the door on us. Prepare for the worst. On Earth, President Helen Carter called an emergency meeting of the world's leaders. The footage from Aquatica had reached every human settlement, and the reaction was immediate and unified. Humanity had been betrayed by those who claimed to represent justice and order. The Galactic Council has shown its true face, President Carter announced to the world. They stand with murderers and call genocide a police action. They brand us as terrorists for trying to save innocent lives. Very well. If they will not accept us as friends, then they will learn to respect us as enemies. In his quarters aboard the Defiance, Jake Morrison studied the crystal that Sethtar had given him. The device contained detailed records of hegemony communications, proving that the attack on the Scifi had been planned for months. It also contained something else, the locations of hegemony military bases and the defensive capabilities of HFY. Their HOMEWORLD stat. Jake realized that Sethtar had been preparing for this possibility long before the attack began. The wise old alien had known that someday someone would need to make the hegemony pay for their crimes. He had trusted humanity to be that someone. Admiral Paul Grant's face appeared on Jake's communication screen. Captain Morrison, you're being promoted to Admiral and given command of the First Strike Fleet. Your orders are to return to Earth immediately. What's happening, sir? Jake asked. Grant's expression was grim. We're going to war, Admiral. The biggest war this galaxy has ever seen, and you're going to help us win it. As the Defiance turned toward Earth, Jake looked once more at the piece of Scifi art that Sethtar had given him. Two species swimming together in harmony. It was a beautiful dream, but the galaxy had chosen a different path. Jake placed the artwork carefully in his personal safe, next to the crystal containing evidence of the hegemony's crimes. Someday, when justice had been served, he would find a place of honor for both items. But first, there was work to do. The Scifi had believed in peace and cooperation. They had died for that belief. Now it fell to humanity to ensure that their sacrifice meant something. 2 years had passed since the massacre at Aquatica, and Earth was no longer the same world. President Helen Carter stood in the command center of the new Terran Defense Headquarters, watching displays that showed the greatest military buildup in human history. Show me the production numbers, she said to her aide. The holographic display filled with statistics that would have seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Earth's factories were producing warships at a rate of 50 per month. The asteroid belt had been turned into a massive mining operation. Every human colony was contributing resources to the war effort. We now have over 3,000 combat vessels, reported Admiral Paul Grant. Everything from fighter craft to our new Dreadnought-class battleships. But more importantly, we have something the hegemony doesn't expect. Carter nodded. Our new weapon systems. Dr. Tony Clark stepped forward, his face showing the exhaustion of someone who had worked nonstop for 2 years. The quantum torpedoes are ready for deployment. Each one can punch through Council-era shielding like it's paper. Our new energy weapons are 50% more powerful than anything the hegemony has. And the intelligence network? Carter asked. Better than we hoped, replied Colonel Amy Foster, head of Earth's new Special Operations Division. The surviving Zealothi have been incredibly helpful. They know every detail of hegemony military doctrine. Plus, we've made contact with resistance groups on 17 different worlds. Carter studied the star map showing hegemony space. 4 heavily defended systems, each containing billions of alien civilians. The moral weight of what they were planning pressed down on her shoulders. Casualties? She asked quietly. Admiral. Grant's expression was grim. Military casualties on our side will be heavy. We estimate losing 30% of our fleet in the initial assault. As for hegemony civilian casualties, he paused. That depends on how quickly their governments surrender. President Carter had aged 10 years in the past, too. The woman who had once been known for her diplomatic approach to international problems now spent her days planning the largest military operation in galactic history. Any word from the other Council species? She asked. 3 have sent secret communications expressing support for our actions, Foster reported. The Ethereals, the Crystalline Union, and surprisingly, the Hive. Confederation. They're providing intelligence, but can't openly support us without risking hegemony retaliation. Carter walked to the window overlooking Earth's capital. Below, she could see ordinary humans going about their daily lives. Children playing in parks, couples walking hand in hand, elderly people feeding birds. All of them depending on her too. Keep them safe in a galaxy that had branded them as enemies. Bring me Admiral Morrison, she said. Jake Morrison had changed as much as Earth itself. The optimistic explorer who had made first contact with the Zealothi was gone, replaced by a hard-eyed military strategist. He entered Carter's office wearing the black uniform of the Terran Strike Fleet, his chest decorated with ribbons representing the refugees he had saved from Aquatica. Madam President, Jake said, saluting. How are our people, Jake? Carter asked, gesturing for him to sit. Ready, Jake replied simply. Every crew member has volunteered for this mission. They all know they might not come home. They don't care. Carter poured 2 cups of coffee, a luxury that had become rare as Earth's resources went to military production. Do you think we're doing the right thing? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I keep thinking about Seftar, about all the Zealothi children we couldn't save, about the lies the Council told to justify genocide. He looked directly at Carter. The hegemony chose this path when they decided that young species don't deserve to exist. We're just finishing what they started. Operation Reckoning is approved, Carter said formally. You have full authority to proceed. Jake stood and saluted. Again, thank you, Madam President. The Zealothi will be avenged. Across the solar system, humanity's war machine moved into its final phase. On Mars, the new shipyards launched the TDF Retribution, a dreadnought the size of a small city. Captain Betty Stone, formerly a merchant marine officer, now commanded humanity's most powerful warship. All systems check out, reported her chief engineer, Commander Dave Miller. The main guns are charged and ready. This ship can take on a hegemony battle group by itself. Betty nodded grimly. She had lost her brother in the evacuation of a Zealothi colony world. Like many humans, her motivation was deeply personal. Then let's go hunting. In the outer system, General Marcus Webb drilled his marine assault forces. These were no longer the traditional soldiers Earth had known. Advanced genetic modifications had made them stronger and faster. New armor systems let them fight in any environment. Most importantly, they had been trained by Zealothi survivors who knew every weakness of hegemony ground forces. Remember, Marcus told his troops, we're not conquerors. We're liberators. Every world the hegemony controls is held by fear and oppression. Show the civilians that we're there to free them, not enslave them. The Zelithy refugees had been crucial to the war effort. The survivors from Aquatica had provided detailed information about hegemony military systems, government structures, and cultural weaknesses. More importantly, they had helped humanity understand the true scope of the hegemony's crimes. They have been committing genocide for centuries, explained Corval, one of the senior Zelithy survivors. Dozens of species have been wiped out for being too aggressive or too advanced, or simply for asking too many questions. The galaxy fears them because they have never been challenged. Admiral Morrison studied the intelligence reports in his flagship's war room. The hegemony had 4 core systems, each heavily fortified and defended by massive fleets. Traditional military doctrine would suggest attacking one system at a time, but Jake had a different plan. We hit all 4 simultaneously, he explained. To his staff, they won't expect that level of coordination from a primitive species like us. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late to coordinate their defenses. Sir, that divides our forces, pointed out Captain Stone. We'll be outnumbered at each target. Numbers aren't everything, Jake replied. The hegemony has been fighting the same way for 1,000 years. They use overwhelming force and expect their enemies to surrender quickly. They've never faced an opponent willing to accept massive casualties to achieve victory. The final piece of the puzzle was Earth's new artificial intelligence systems. Dr. Clark had worked with captured hegemony technology to create computer systems that could coordinate the assault across multiple star systems in real time. The AI will link every ship in our fleet, Clark explained. Response times will be measured in milliseconds instead of minutes. Our ships will fight as a single organism instead of individual units. As the preparations neared completion, President, Carter addressed the human race one final time before the assault began. 2 years ago, we reached out to the galaxy in friendship, she said, her image broadcast to every human settlement. We offered cooperation, peace, and mutual respect. The galaxy's response was to watch in silence as our friends were murdered, and then brand us as terrorists for trying to save innocent lives. The camera showed images from Aquatica, the burned oceans, and floating bodies of Zelithy civilians. Every human watching felt the same rage that had driven them to this moment. Today, we show the galaxy what terrorism really looks like, Carter continued. We go to war not for conquest, but for justice. Not for glory, but for the memory of friends who believed in a better future. The hegemony thinks they have crushed the dream of a peaceful galaxy. They are wrong. We are that dream's guardian, and we will not let it die. In the final hours before the assault, Admiral Morrison visited the memorial chamber aboard his flagship. Inside, holographic images showed every Zelithy who had died at Aquatica. In the center was Zeeth Tar, frozen. In a moment when he had been explaining human poetry to his grandchildren, Jake placed his hand on the memorial wall. We kept our promise, old friend. Justice is coming. The greatest fleet in human history prepared to depart. 4 separate task forces, each commanded by veterans of the Aquatica rescue. Their targets were the hegemony homeworlds, Vorthik Prime, Kreldar, Zephyros, and Drakmor Station Dot, as the ships powered up their engines. Jake opened a communication channel to the entire fleet. All vessels, this is Admiral Morrison. In 6 hours, we will begin the largest military operation in galactic history. We go to make the galaxy safe for young species who dream of reaching the stars. We go to show the universe that genocide has consequences. We go to honor the memory of friends who died believing in our better nature. The fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes and fury of an entire species. Behind them, Earth continued its frantic preparations. for the war that would follow. Win or lose, humanity would never again be the innocent species that had first contacted the Scifi with hopes of friendship. The galaxy was about to learn that when you corner a predator, you don't get submission. You get violence beyond imagination. And humanity, despite its dreams of peace, was the greatest predator the galaxy had ever seen. The attack began at exactly the same moment across 4 different star systems. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship TDF Vengeance as humanity's greatest fleet dropped out of hyperspace around Drakmor Station, the military headquarters of the hegemony. "All ships, weapons free," Jake commanded. "Remember, we're here for justice, not revenge." The first volleys of quantum torpedoes lit up space like new stars being born. The hegemony had never faced weapons like these. Their shields, designed to stop traditional energy weapons, collapsed under the assault. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were torn apart in seconds dot at Vorthik Prime. Captain Betty Stone led her dreadnought squadron against the spider-like aliens' massive orbital defense platforms. The TDF Retribution's main guns spoke with voices of thunder, each shot destroying installations the size of cities. "Target their communication arrays first," Betty ordered. "Cut them off from each other." On Kreldar, the bear-like aliens' mountain, fortresses came under assault from General Marcus Webb's ground forces. His enhanced Marines moved through the enemy defenses like ghosts, their new armor systems making them nearly invisible to Krell sensors. "Objective secured," Marcus reported as his forces captured the planetary government center. "Krell leadership is in custody." The Fourth Fleet, commanded by Admiral Lisa Grant, hit Sephiroth with devastating precision. The glass-skinned aliens had thought their crystal cities were impregnable. They learned otherwise as human weapons carved through their defenses like a hot knife through ice. But it was at Drakmor Station where the most important battle took place. This was where Warlord Scarth commanded the hegemony's military forces. This was where the orders to destroy Aquatica had originated. Jake's fleet faced the heaviest resistance. Hundreds of hegemony ships defended their command center, fighting with the desperation of those who knew they were facing extinction. For 6 hours, space around Drakmor Station became a hell of energy beams and exploding ships. "Admiral, we've lost 30% of our fleet," reported his tactical officer. "But their defenses are cracking." Jake watched as the massive battle station that had coordinated genocide across the galaxy began to burn. "All ships, focus fire on the command tower. End this." The combined firepower of humanity's remaining ships struck Drakmor Station's control center. In seconds, the structure that had housed 1,000 years of hegemony planning was reduced to glowing debris. Scarth's final transmission was broadcast across the galaxy. "This is impossible. Primitive species cannot defeat the hegemony. We are the guardians of galactic order." Jake's response was simple. "Not anymore." With their command structure destroyed and their homeworlds under occupation, the remaining hegemony forces surrendered within hours. But Jake's mission was not complete. He had one more task to perform. Using Scifi intelligence, Jake's forces located the secret archives where the hegemony kept records of their crimes. What they found there horrified even battle-hardened soldiers. Files documenting the systematic extermination of 47 different species over the past 5 centuries. Detailed plans for eliminating dozens more, including humanity. "Broadcast it all," Jake ordered. "Every record, every plan, every genocide they committed or planned. Let the galaxy see what we stopped." The evidence transmission reached every inhabited world in known space. At galactic council chambers on Nexus Prime fell silent as representatives watched footage of hegemony commanders laughing about the destruction of entire civilizations. Within hours, 3 council species formally withdrew from the galactic government. The Ethereals, the Crystalline Union, and the Hive Confederation announced They could no longer support an organization that had protected genocidal criminals. "The humans have shown us the truth," declared Christarch Lumina. "We stand with those who fight for justice, not those who enable mass murder." But Jake's greatest moment came when he personally confronted the captured hegemony leadership. The 4 war criminals who had ordered the destruction of Aquatica stood in chains before the human admiral who had sworn to avenge his friends. "Called us primitive," Jake said quietly. "You said we were too aggressive for galactic civilization. Perhaps you are right. We are aggressive when our friends are threatened. We are primitive enough to believe that genocide is wrong, no matter who commits it." Warlord Scarth tried to maintain his arrogance even in defeat. "You think you have won something, human? You are just another conqueror. In time, you will become like us." Jake shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. We didn't come here to rule. We came here to judge." The trials of the hegemony leadership were broadcast live across the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, those who committed genocide faced real consequences. The evidence was overwhelming, the verdict inevitable. When the executions were carried out, Jake personally triggered the devices that ended the lives of those who had murdered the Zealothi. It gave him no pleasure, but it brought a sense of closure that had been missing since Zeethtar died and his arms docked with the hegemony defeated. President Helen Carter addressed the galaxy from Earth. Her words would reshape galactic civilization forever. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," she began, "humanity did not seek this war. We came to your galactic council in peace, offering friendship and cooperation. We were rejected not because we were unworthy, but because we threatened the power of those who profit from oppression." The camera showed images of liberated worlds where humans worked, alongside alien civilians, to rebuild what the hegemony had destroyed. "Today, we announce the formation of the Alliance of Free Worlds," Carter continued. "Any species that believes in justice, equality, and the right of all beings to reach for the stars is welcome to join us. We offer what the old council never could: true representation for all, not just the powerful." Within months, 17 species had joined the new alliance. The Zealothi survivors, though few in number, became the alliance's first ambassadors. Their message was simple: this is what the galaxy could have been all along. Jake Morrison, now Supreme Admiral of the Alliance Fleet, established the Terran doctrine that would govern human military action for generations to come. Any government that commits genocide will face the full might of the Alliance. Any species that threatens peaceful civilizations will be stopped. Any organization that profits from oppression will be dismantled. The old Galactic Council tried to maintain its authority, but without the hegemony's military backing, it crumbled within a year. Some species joined the alliance willingly. Others chose to remain independent, but agreed to follow alliance principles. A few tried to maintain the old ways and found themselves isolated and irrelevant. On the anniversary of the Aquatica massacre, Jake stood in the memorial garden that had been built on New Aquatica, a water world terraformed specifically for the Zealothi survivors. Holographic images of every victim floated above pools of crystal-clear water. Corvo, the eldest surviving Zealothi, swam up to where Jake stood. "Your species kept its promise, Admiral Norrison. Justice was served, and our people's sacrifice has meaning." Jake nodded, thinking of all the humans who had died to make this moment possible. "We learned something important from your people, Corvo. That true strength isn't about having the biggest guns or the most ships. It's about standing up for what's right, even when the cost is terrible." The memorial garden was not just for the Zealothi. Holographic displays honored the fallen from every species that had suffered under hegemony rule. But at the center stood a simple statue showing 2 figures, a human and a Zealothi, reaching toward the stars together. Jake read the inscription aloud: "To all who dream of a better galaxy, and to those who gave their lives to make that dream possible. As the ceremony ended, Jake received a message from Earth. A new species had just made first contact with Alliance scouts. They were young, curious, and eager to join the galactic community. Unlike humanity's first contact experience, they would be welcomed with open arms. Another species reaches for the stars, Jake murmured to himself, and we'll be there to help them. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still injustices to address. But the age of genocide was over. The age of fear was ending. Young species no longer had to worry about being exterminated for asking too many questions or advancing too quickly. The Alliance grew stronger each year, not through conquest, but through the simple promise that all beings deserved the chance to reach their potential. Earth's warships still patrolled the space lanes, but now they carried a different message. Where once the galaxy had known only the cold mathematics of power, now there was hope. The hegemony had tried to teach humanity its place in the galactic order. Instead, they had learned that some species cannot be intimidated, some principles cannot be compromised, and some friends are worth any sacrifice to protect. As Jake walked through the memorial garden, he carried with him the piece of Zelithy art that Sethtar had given him years ago. Two species swimming together in harmony. It was no longer just a dream. It was the foundation of a new galactic civilization. Humanity had come to the stars as explorers. They had been forced to become warriors. But in the end, they had become something more important, guardians of the innocent and protectors of the dream that all beings could live in peace.
John Miller wiped sweat from his brow as he tightened the last bolt on the air filtration system. The maintenance corridor on the Starseeker was cramped and hot, just like every other day aboard the exploration vessel. John had been the ship's maintenance engineer for 3 years now, and he knew every pipe, panel, and problem spot intimately. "Miller, report to the bridge immediately." Captain Lisa Reynolds' voice crackled through his communicator. There was an edge to her voice that John rarely heard. "On my way, Captain," he replied, gathering his tools. Whatever was happening, it must be serious. The corridors buzzed with unusual activity as John made his way to the bridge. Crew members hurried past him, their faces a mix of excitement and worry. When the doors to the bridge slid open, John understood why. On the main view screen was another ship, unlike anything he had ever seen. It seemed to shimmer with an iridescent glow, its design completely alien to human engineering principles. "Miller?" "Good." Captain Reynolds nodded toward him. Her normally perfect uniform looked like she'd been wearing it for days. "We've made contact." John stared at the screen. "First contact? Real aliens?" "Very real," said Communications Officer Samantha Green. She hadn't looked up from her station in what appeared to be hours. "They call themselves the Zolaxians, and they want to meet us face to face." Captain Reynolds gestured to a seat at the conference table set up at the back of the bridge. "I need you on the welcome team, Miller." John blinked in surprise. "Me? I'm just maintenance. Shouldn't you have diplomats or scientists?" "Our science team will be there," she assured him. "But the Zolaxians specifically requested to meet various crew functions. Their society values technical workers. They want to see how humans approach practical problems." 4 hours later, John found himself in the ship's main conference room. Trying not to fidget in his freshly replicated dress uniform, 5 other crew members, including Captain Reynolds and Samantha Green, waited nervously. The door slid open, and the Zolaxians entered. They were tall, nearly 7 feet, with blue-gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. Their bodies were thin but clearly powerful, with forearms that moved with careful precision. Their faces had large, multifaceted eyes that reminded John of dragonflies back on Earth. The lead Zolaxian stepped forward. A small device on its chest glowed, and words emerged in slightly mechanical English. "Greetings, humans of the Starseeker. I am Chief Diplomat Zelvox of the Zolaxian Cooperative. We welcome you to shared space." Captain Reynolds stepped forward and performed the greeting they had rehearsed. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we are honored to meet you. The formal introductions continued, each crew member stating their name and role. When it came to John's turn, he simply said, "John Miller, maintenance engineer." The Zelaxians seemed to perk up at this. Zelvox's multifaceted eyes focused intently on him. "The one who maintains the functioning of your vessel? This is a position of great importance in our culture." As the meeting progressed, John noticed the Zelaxians' extreme attention to protocol. Every action seemed carefully considered, every word precisely chosen. They explained their society in methodical detail, a species that valued order, planning, and risk avoidance above all else. Halfway through the meeting, Zelvox's translation device began to emit a high-pitched whine. The alien tapped it with a long finger, looking concerned. "Our apologies. The translation matrix appears to be destabilizing. We will need to return to our vessel to perform the 19-step diagnostic and repair procedure." John's eyes narrowed as he looked at the device. The problem seemed obvious to him. Simple signal interference from the ship's communication array. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, already reaching for his pocket toolkit that he carried everywhere. Captain Reynolds shot him a warning glance, but Zelvox nodded curiously. John took the small device and popped open its casing with a tiny screwdriver. Inside was technology far more advanced than anything humans had built, but electronics were electronics. He could see where a power coupling had come loose. "Hey, Sam," he called to Samantha Green. "Hold my coffee." He handed his mug to the surprised communications officer, then pulled a paperclip from his pocket. With practiced hands, he straightened. It bent it into a small spring and slipped it between the loose connections. Finding a stick of gum in his other pocket, he chewed it quickly, then used the sticky material to secure the makeshift spring in place. He snapped the casing shut and handed it back to the stunned alien. "Try it now." Zelvox hesitantly accepted the device. The whine had stopped, and when the alien spoke, the translation came through crystal clear. "You repaired complex Zelaxian technology with items from your pocket? Without testing, without approval?" The entire Zelaxian delegation seemed frozen in shock. Captain Reynolds stepped in quickly. "I apologize if Engineer Miller has overstepped. He was simply trying to be helpful." "How long would your repair procedure take?" John asked, genuinely curious. "The standard protocol requires 14 hours for diagnostics, 5 for committee approval, and 3 for implementation," Zelvox replied. John couldn't help but grin. "Well, mine took about 30 seconds. The meeting continued, but now all the Zelaxians kept their 4 eyes fixed primarily on John. One of them, who had been introduced as their chief safety officer, was furiously making notes on a tablet-like device. As they left, Zelvox approached John directly. "Your approach to problem-solving is disturbing yet fascinating. We have never encountered a species that would attempt repairs without extensive testing and safety protocols. Sometimes you just have to try things." John shrugged. The alien's head tilted in consideration. "This hold my coffee procedure, is this a standard human protocol?" John laughed. "Something like that." After the Zelaxians departed, Captain Reynolds pulled John aside. "Miller, you nearly caused an interstellar incident. They could have seen that as tampering with their technology." "But it worked," John replied, "and they seemed impressed eventually." Samantha joined them, an amused smile on her face. "Actually, they were impressed. Their message to me just now requested all available information on, and I quote, human maintenance procedures and the cultural significance of the Hold My Coffee protocol." Captain Reynolds sighed deeply. "Miller, for the next diplomatic meeting, please try to follow the established protocols." "No promises, Captain," John grinned. "But I'll try." That night, aboard the Zelaxian vessel, Chief Diplomat Zelvox and the safety officer reviewed the meeting recordings. "Their disregard for proper procedures is alarming," the safety officer stated. "The human called Miller performed a repair with no testing, no validation, and used food items. Yet it worked," Zelvox noted. "In the time it would have taken us to begin our diagnostic, he solved the problem." "It's dangerous," insisted the safety officer. "Perhaps," Zelvox acknowledged, but also potentially valuable. Begin a new research file. Title it, Human Innovation Protocols. And add a special subsection for this hold my coffee procedure. I believe we have much to learn from these humans. The safety officer reluctantly made the entry, not realizing this would eventually become the most referenced section in the entire Galactic Safety Manual. 6 months had passed since the first meeting with the Zolaxians. In that time, humanity had been formally invited to join the Galactic Community, a loose federation of 12 spacefaring species. The Starseeker had returned to Earth, and its crew had become instant celebrities. None more so than John Miller, whose quick fix of alien technology had become the stuff of legend. John stared out the viewport of the diplomatic shuttle as it approached the massive space station orbiting the Zolaxian homeworld. The structure was a marvel of engineering, perfectly symmetrical with not a single panel out of place. "Nervous?" asked Samantha Green, who sat beside him. "Why me?" John sighed. "I'm not a diplomat. I'm not even a good public speaker." Samantha smiled. "Because you've become a symbol. The Zolaxians specifically requested your presence at the Galactic Safety Conference." Captain Reynolds had selected John and Samantha to represent humanity at this important event. While other human diplomats and scientists would attend various meetings, the two of them had been invited to the main safety panel, a great honor, according to the Zolaxians. The shuttle docked with perfect precision. When the airlock opened, they were greeted by Zelvox, now wearing ceremonial robes with intricate patterns. Engineer Miller, Communications Officer Green. "Welcome to Unity Station. We are pleased you could attend this important gathering." John nodded awkwardly. "Thanks for inviting us." Zelvox led them through spotless corridors where various alien species moved with careful precision. John noticed how each followed clearly marked pathways on the floor, and no one deviated from their assigned routes. The conference hall was enormous. 12 raised platforms surrounded a central stage, each hosting representatives from a different species. The humans were directed to their platform where several empty seats awaited other human delegates. "The Galactic Safety Conference occurs once every 5 cycles," Zelvox explained. "Here we establish universal safety standards for interspecies interactions. This year's focus is emergency procedures." John tried to pay attention as the conference began. Representatives from each species gave lengthy presentations about their safety protocols. The Talaxians, a species resembling tall, thin reptiles, spent a full hour describing the proper way to activate an emergency energy field. Before engaging any energy field, a 6-hour safety check must be performed, the Talaxian representative explained. First, one must verify that all 27 subsystems are functioning within acceptable parameters. John felt his eyelids growing heavy. Beside him, Samantha discreetly elbowed him in the ribs. "Stay awake," she whispered. "This is important diplomatic stuff." "It's boring diplomatic stuff," John whispered back. "Who needs 6 hours to check if a switch works?" The presentations continued. The Vendarans, a species of floating jellyfish-like creatures, explained their 18-step evacuation procedure. The Xylorians, who resembled large insects, detailed their risk assessment matrix with 64 possible outcomes. By the 3rd hour, John was struggling to maintain consciousness. Even Samantha was fighting to keep her eyes open. Suddenly, the lights flickered. Then they went out completely. Emergency lights came on, casting the room in a dim red glow. The effect on the gathered aliens was immediate and alarming. The Vendarans began pulsating rapidly. The Talaxians froze in place. From across the room, John could hear various translation devices activating. "Remain calm. Initiate emergency assessment protocol. Begin evacuation sequence alpha." No one actually moved. Each species seemed to be waiting for something. Zelvox approached the human platform. "We are experiencing a power failure. The backup systems should engage automatically, but they appear to be malfunctioning. The emergency committee will convene to address this situation." "How long will that take?" Samantha asked. "The committee Must follow proper procedures. Assessment, planning, and implementation will require approximately 4 hours. John looked around at the dim hall. The various delegates were still in their positions, some consulting tablets or communicating in hushed tones. 4 hours? In the dark? John shook his head. Where's the backup generator located? Zelvox blinked all 4 of his eyes. It is in the maintenance level, but access is restricted during emergency situations. Only authorized technicians with proper clearance may. John was already standing. I'm a maintenance engineer. This is literally my job. But the protocols. John handed his coffee cup to Samantha. Hold my coffee. I'll be back in 10 minutes. Before anyone could stop him, John was heading for the exit. Samantha hurried after him. John, you can't just wander around an alien station. Watch me, he replied, finding a maintenance access panel near the hall entrance. It was locked with an unfamiliar control panel, but John recognized the basic principles. Every ship or station follows the same basic layout. Power distribution is always at the lowest level. Using his pocket tool, John bypassed the security lock. The panel slid open, revealing a ladder leading down. You're going to cause an interstellar incident, Samantha warned, but followed him anyway. Already did that once, might as well make it a habit. They descended through 3 levels before finding what John was looking for. A large room filled with humming equipment. In the center was a device that had to be the backup generator. Its status lights were flashing red. John approached it, cautiously. The design was alien, but the principles of power generation were universal. He quickly located the problem, a simple misalignment in the power coupling. Looks like the primary connection shifted during the power surge, he explained to Samantha. The safety system detected it and shut down to prevent damage. Can you fix it? John was already working. It just needs to be realigned and reset. With careful movements, he adjusted the coupling and reset the system. The generator hummed louder, and the lights in the room brightened. Through the speakers, they could hear an announcement in multiple languages. Power restored. Emergency situation resolved. When they returned to the conference hall, they found all eyes turned toward them. The lights were back on, and the conference had resumed. But instead of continuing with the presentations, the entire hall was watching a replay of John's actions on the main screen. Apparently, the emergency systems had recorded everything. Zelvox approached them, accompanied by representatives from several other species. Engineer Miller, you bypassed 7 safety protocols, ignored proper authorization procedures, and manually adjusted critical infrastructure without approval. John swallowed hard. But I fixed it. In 8 minutes and 43 seconds, added a Xylorian representative, its antennae twitching with what might have been excitement. Our models predicted a minimum resolution time of 4 hours using standard procedures. The Vendaran representative floated closer. This hold my coffee technique. It appears to be a human emergency protocol that prioritizes speed over safety. Samantha stepped in. It's more of a cultural expression. It signals that someone is about to do something unconventional. Risky, John added with a slight smile. The aliens conferred among themselves in their own languages. Finally, Zelvox turned back to them. The conference must document and study this approach. It is concerning, yet the results cannot be denied. We would like to establish a special committee to analyze human emergency response methods. Samantha nodded diplomatically. We would be honored. As they returned to their platform, John whispered to her, I think I just changed the agenda of the entire conference. You did, she replied quietly. And I'm pretty sure they're going to name it after your little catchphrase. From that day forward, the phrase, "Hold my coffee protocol," began to circulate among the alien delegates. By the end of the conference, it had been officially added to the agenda for next year's meeting, with John Miller scheduled as the keynote speaker. The Galactic Safety Manual would never be the same again. A year passed since the Galactic Safety Conference. Human integration into the wider galactic community had progressed rapidly. Earth ships now regularly visited alien worlds, and alien vessels had become a common sight in Earth's orbit. trade. Agreements were signed, cultural exchanges began, and humans found their place among the stars. Proxima Station was the pride of this new cooperation. Built in orbit around a gas giant in the Proxima Centauri system, it served as a massive trading hub where all species could meet, exchange goods, and learn from one another. The station was a marvel of combined technology, with each species contributing their expertise to its construction. Alex Clark wiped sweat from her forehead as she finished her daily inspection of the station's primary coolant system. As the head of the human maintenance team on Proxima Station, she was responsible for making sure the human-built sections ran smoothly. 6 other humans worked under her supervision, maintaining everything from air filtration to power distribution. Her communicator beeped. "Alex, we've got a problem." It was Ben Martinez, her second in command. "The orbital stabilizers are acting weird. Can you meet me in Control Section 4? "On my way," she replied, gathering her tools. Control Section 4 was busy when Alex arrived. Ben stood next to a Zolaxian technician named Krelnar, both staring at a display screen with concern. "What's the situation?" Alex asked. Ben pointed to the screen. "The orbital stabilizers are losing power. We're drifting out of our designated position." Krelnar's translation device spoke in its mechanical voice. "We have initiated the standard diagnostic protocol. The assessment committee has been notified and will convene within the hour." Alex looked more closely at the readings. They were dropping fast, too fast for comfort. "We don't have an hour. How much drift can this station handle before we hit trouble?" "The station can operate safely within deviation parameters of 0.05 units, Krelnar explained. "We are currently at 0.02 and increasing at a rate of 0.004 per hour." Alex did the math quickly. "So we have about 7 hours before we're in danger?" "Correct." "The committee will determine." A loud alarm cut off the Zolaxian's words. Red lights began flashing throughout the control room. Ben checked another screen and his face went pale. "That's not right. The drift just jumped to 0.03 in seconds, and it's accelerating." More alarms joined the first. Through the large observation window, Alex could see the gas giant they orbited seemed to be moving, but she knew it was actually the station that was moving, being pulled toward the massive planet. Krelnar was frantically working at the control panel. "This is not possible. The models predicted a slow decay." The alien technician activated the station-wide communication system. "Emergency alert. All beings proceed to evacuation points according to standard protocols. This is not a drill." Alex grabbed Ben's arm. "What happened? Why the sudden change?" "I don't know, but at this rate we have less than 2 hours before we hit the atmosphere." Alex's mind raced. 2 hours wasn't enough time to evacuate everyone. The station housed over 10,000 beings from various species, and once the station hit the gas giant's atmosphere, it would be torn apart. "Can we boost the stabilizers manually?" she asked. Krelnar shook its head. "The system is in safety lockdown. Only the chief administrator can override, and they are currently in transit from Earth." Ben looked at the controls. "There's another way. The auxiliary thrusters could compensate for the drift." "The auxiliary system is not designed for orbital stabilization," Krelnar protested. "Station design parameters clearly state—" "Forget the design parameters," Alex interrupted. "This is an emergency. We need to try something or everyone dies." The control room was filling with various alien species now, all following their evacuation procedures. A tall Vendaran security officer floated over to them. "You must evacuate immediately. All technical personnel must report to escape vessel, designation 4. Alex stood her ground. "We can save the station. We just need access to the auxiliary thruster controls." "That would violate safety protocols," the Vendaran replied, its tentacles waving agitatedly. "The auxiliary systems cannot be modified without proper authorization." Ben stepped forward. "Look, we don't have time for this. People are going to die." The security officer moved to block their path to the auxiliary control panel. "I cannot permit unauthorized." Ben pulled out his personal tablet and a bottle of carbonated water from his pocket. He quickly unscrewed the cap, took a swig, and handed the bottle to Alex. "Hold my soda." Before anyone could stop him, Ben splashed some water onto his tablet and pressed it against the security panel by the door. There was a spark, a sizzle, and the security door slid open. The Vendaran security officer recoiled in horror. "You damaged station property. This is a violation of Section 47B of the Safety Code." But Ben and Alex were already through the door and running toward the auxiliary control room. Alarms blared throughout the station. Over the speakers, calm voices in multiple languages directed people to evacuation points. But Alex and her team had another plan. The auxiliary control room was empty when they arrived. It was designed as a backup, meant to be used only if the main controls failed completely. Ben immediately sat at the console and began working. "We need to reroute power from the secondary systems to the auxiliary thrusters," Alex explained as she opened an access panel in the wall. "If we can give them enough juice, we might be able to push back against the drift." "The system won't let me override the safety protocols," Ben said, frustrated. "It keeps asking for administrator authorization." Alex pulled out a small device from her tool belt, a universal bypass module that she had designed herself. It wasn't strictly regulation, but it had saved her life more than once back on Earth. "Try it now," she said after connecting the device to the system. The console lit up with new options. Ben quickly began the power rerouting process while Alex worked on reconfiguring the thrusters. "This is crazy," Ben muttered as he worked. "The station designers said this was theoretically possible but practically suicidal." "Well, we're about to find out which one it is," Alex replied grimly. The door slid open, and Krelnar entered with several other alien technicians. They watched in a mixture of horror and fascination as the humans worked. "What you are attempting is not in any approved emergency procedure," Krelnar said, but made no move to stop them. "Yeah, well, sometimes you have to improvise," Alex replied, without looking up from her work. After 10 tense minutes, they were ready. The auxiliary thrusters, never designed for this purpose, had been reconfigured to provide stabilizing thrust. "Here goes nothing," Ben said and activated the system. The station shuddered. For a moment it seemed like nothing was happening. Then gradually the alarm tones began to change. The flashing red lights turned to yellow, then green. "Orbital. Decay halting," announced the station's computer. "Stabilization in progress." On the monitors they could see the drift indicator slowing, then stopping, then beginning to reverse. The station was moving back into its proper orbit. The alien technicians stared in disbelief. Krelnar approached the console, examining the readings. "You succeeded. Using methods that violate 17 separate safety protocols and bypassing 3 security systems." Alex smiled tiredly. "Sometimes that's what it takes. When the manual doesn't cover your situation, you have to write a new one." Word of what had happened spread quickly throughout the station and beyond. The humans who had saved Proxima Station by breaking all the rules became instant celebrities across the galaxy. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. The topic? The creation of a special committee to study human problem-solving under pressure. They named it, to the embarrassment of the official human delegates, the Hold My Beer Protocol Committee. The sun was setting when Emily finally reached the old lighthouse. Its white paint was peeling and the windows looked dark and empty. She had been walking for hours, her backpack feeling heavier with each step. The wind blew her hair across her face and she could taste the salt from the sea. For days, Emily had been searching for clues about her grandfather's last journey. He was a sailor who disappeared many years ago, and no one knew what happened to him. Her family had always talked about him in whispers with sad eyes and worried looks. She pulled out the old map from her backpack. It was worn and yellow, with strange marks that her grandfather had made many years ago. The map showed a path that led to this exact spot, the abandoned lighthouse on the rocky coast. Emily knew something important was waiting for her here. As she walked closer, she noticed something strange about the lighthouse. There was a small window on the side that looked different from the others. It seemed newer, and there were marks around it that looked like someone had recently tried to cover something up. Emily's heart started to beat faster. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell her about her grandfather. He was an explorer who loved finding hidden things. He always said that the most important secrets were the ones nobody wanted to talk about. She checked her backpack again. Inside was a small metal box her grandmother had given her before she died. The box was old and had strange marks on it. Her grandmother had told her to open it only when she found the lighthouse. The wind was getting stronger, and dark clouds were gathering in the sky. Emily knew she had to make a choice. She could turn back and go home, or she could try to find out what was hidden in this old lighthouse. She walked around the building looking for a way inside. Most of the doors were locked or broken, but she found a small side door that was partially open. It creaked when she pushed it, making a sound that echoed through the empty building. Inside, the lighthouse was dark and cold. Dust covered everything, and old cobwebs hung from the ceiling. Emily used her phone's flashlight to look around. The light showed old furniture, broken maps, and strange objects that looked like they had been left in a hurry. On the wall, she saw an old photograph. It was a picture of her grandfather standing next to another man. They were both wearing sailing clothes and looked very serious. Emily had never seen this picture before. She wondered what story it could tell. Her fingers touched the metal box in her backpack. It felt warm, almost like it was waiting to be opened. Emily knew that whatever was inside might change everything she knew about her family's history. The lighthouse seemed to be watching her, holding on to its secrets. Outside, the wind continued to blow, and the waves crashed against the rocks. Emily took a deep breath. She knew her adventure was just beginning and nothing would be the same after today. She looked around the room one more time. Something was hidden here, something that had been waiting for her to find it. Emily was sure of one thing. She would not leave until she discovered the truth about her grandfather's last journey. The metal box in her backpack felt heavy. It was time to uncover the secrets that had been hidden for so many years. Emily's hands were shaking, but her heart was brave. Whatever happened next would change her life forever. Emily's hands were shaking as she opened the metal box. Inside, she found an old notebook with faded pages. The cover was leather and looked very old. She carefully opened it, afraid the pages might break. The first page had a drawing of a ship. It was not like the ships in history books. This ship looked strange, with weird lines and marks that did not make sense. Next to the drawing, her grandfather had written some words in small, careful writing. "The map is not just a map," the first line read. "It is a key to something bigger." Emily's heart beat faster. She remembered how her grandmother always said, her grandfather was more than just a simple sailor. He loved mysteries and always talked about hidden stories that nobody else knew about. She turned the page. More drawings appeared. They showed different places, a mountain with a strange shape, an island that was not on any normal map, and some lines that looked like a secret code. Emily knew these were not just random drawings. They meant something important. The lighthouse around her felt different now. It was like the old building was watching her, waiting to see what she would do next. Dust danced in the light from her phone's flashlight. Old furniture seemed to hold secrets in their broken wood and faded paint. Another page showed a letter. It was written in her grandfather's handwriting, but parts of it were missing. Some words were torn, and some were hard to read. Emily could make out a few important words: treasure, danger, and must protect. Outside, the wind was getting stronger. Waves crashed against the rocks near the lighthouse. The sound was loud and seemed to match the excitement Emily was feeling. Something big was about to happen, and she could feel it. She continued reading the notebook. Her grandfather wrote about a journey he took many years ago. He talked about a group of people who were looking for something very special. But they were not just looking. They were trying to stop someone else from finding it first. The notebook mentioned a map. But this was not an ordinary map. It was a map that showed something hidden, something that could change the world. Emily remembered the map she had brought with her. Could it be the same one her grandfather talked about? She looked around the lighthouse room. Old things were everywhere: broken chairs, dusty books, and strange objects that looked like they came from different parts of the world. Each item seemed to have a story, just like the notebook in her hands. A sudden noise made her jump. Something moved in the corner of the room. Emily turned her phone's light quickly. It was just an old curtain moving in the wind. But for a moment, she felt like someone was watching her. The notebook had more drawings. They showed people. Some looked like sailors, some looked like explorers. They all seemed to be part of something big and dangerous. Emily could feel the excitement and fear in her grandfather's writing. One page was different from the others. It had a map drawn in red ink. The map showed a place that did not look like anywhere on Earth. Strange symbols were written around the edges. Emily knew this was important, but she did not understand what it meant. She found a small envelope tucked between the pages. Inside was a key. It was made of old metal and looked very special. The key had strange marks on it. Not like normal keys that open doors. This key looked like it could open something much more important. The lighthouse creaked. Wind came through small holes in the walls. Emily felt cold, but she was too excited to stop reading. Her grandfather's story was coming to life in her hands. Each page showed her something new and mysterious. As she read more, she learned about a secret group her grandfather was part of. They were looking for something that could change everything, but other people wanted to stop them. It was like a big game of hide and seek, but with much higher stakes. Emily knew she had to be careful. The notebook made it clear that some people would do anything to find what her grandfather was protecting. She looked at the key in her hand. What could it open? What secrets was it hiding? The sun was setting outside. Dark shadows filled the lighthouse. Emily knew she had found something big. Her grandfather's story was just beginning, and she was now a part of it. Whatever happened next would change her life forever.